chart your progress. So use a checklist to see your accomplishments. That's more for your teens. Like you don't necessarily need to chart your progress on how it's going with your kid, although you may want to just keep a journal. In middle school, it's a great time to try new things. So you might make a list of things they might want to try, like a foreign language, an instrument, a sport, join a club. That's a great time to kind of make a list. And then when they get to high school, maybe they expand that list.
Welcome to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast with DIY healthy lifestyle blogger, Ahna Fulmer. Empowering you to transform your life, one imperfect day at a time.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Ahna Fulmer. If you are watching this on YouTube, I apologize. We have a really weird video thing going on. I sat down here and realized suddenly my video camera does not work. I am using the really horrible computer one. It looks super weird. My apologies. We will get that figured out for another day. But I am super excited to introduce to you Mel Studer. Mel is a teen parenting mentor and coach, and the author of the highly regarded book, College Bound, The Ultimate List of Conversations to Help Your Teen Through High School. She is here to share her expertise on thriving with teens. She's going to share the 7 C's of successful teenage parenting. You do not want to miss these. Welcome, mentor and coach Mel Studer. My 5-year-old likes to sit at this podcasting desk, which I love that she wants to be in here with me. But then every time I go to sit down and record, half my stuff is unplugged. And I'm a little curious if my 5-year-old might be the reason my camera suddenly stopped working. So
Could be.
We will find out. Well, speaking of children, this is so fun to have you here. We have a lot of coaches on here, but I especially love when we have coaches that are really niched down to a very specific population and target market, if you will, and teens especially. My oldest is 10, going on 20. And actually my 5-year-old is she's 5 going on 15. I should say she's the one I feel like is more the teenager. But I love that you specifically work with teens, and there's so many areas that I'm excited to hone in on. You have 3 kids currently, is that right?
I do. They're all boys.
And what ages are they? Okay.
So my oldest is at 20. He's 25.
Wow.
And then my middle is, he's going to be 23 in a couple weeks. And then my youngest is 18. He's a senior in high school right now.
So when we talk about your experience, like you've been there, you've done that, you've kind of gone through the process. And I think that's an important thing to highlight because it's challenging sometimes when you're in the midst of it to see it clearly. And it's also hard when you're before it. But we always say like hindsight vision is 20/20. So I think it's also a blessing to be on the side of it that you are, where you're sort of able to also look back and be like, in real time, like I could have done this, or maybe I should have done this.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that. I mean, no parent is ever perfect by any means. So, and part of my background as well, besides being a mom to 3 almost grown or practically grown boys is, and I say that because 25 is when they say that their brain is completely developed, and in his case,
so they say.
Close. But I taught preschool for 11 years. I've taught elementary for 9, and then I've taught middle school.
God bless you.
And so,
what was the worst? Which one was the worst? Which was the hardest? I mean, those are significantly middle school. Yeah.
Yeah. If you would have told me in college that I would ever have taught preschool, I would have said, no way. You know what? I think of all, those are kind of my favorite, my little people.
Aww. Yeah.
So I think you just realize over time, maybe after being a mom, I don't know, that there's so much you can do when they're little. They're just like little sponges. They're still sponges in middle school. They just they're not very receptive, They're drying up as sponges.
Their ideas have kind of been formed, their concept of the world that they
right. And they're kind of a little, I called them my snarly toddlers. They still have a lot of toddler-esque behaviors, attitudes. They revert in a lot of ways, but they're not cute. They smell. And they, like you said, they've already formed some of their own opinions, which
Yeah.
That's a fun time.
Basically, when it comes to my 5-year-old, I'm screwed. That's the bottom line, because she's basically a middle schooler in a tiny little 5-year-old package.
I know. I used to tell my boys, it's so good that you're cute, because I would so put you out in that window sometimes. I mean, they just look at you and they're so cute and they say something like, really?
Wait a second. I know you're cute, but that was totally uncalled for.
Right.
Oh, it's so true. So then talk to me a little bit about how you went from being a teacher to now being a teen coach. Tell me about that transition.
So that's an evolution that I am still in the process of. So over the last 30 years, I've been a mom for 25 plus. I've been an educator in different ways through all of that. None of it was all together or in a straight line. I think when my oldest son was 14, which was now almost 12 years ago. That's scary.
Crazy.
I think when he hit middle school, my husband and I were like, this hasn't been terrible. He's a pretty good kid. We're patting ourselves on the back. And then, something happens when they turn 14 for real, not just the adding on age like you are. And they sort of start to shut you out and they want to be alone and their friends are more important. And I think we realized, oh my goodness, this is not going to work for us, because we'd always been really close with our kids, and to have him push back was really difficult to experience. And so that's when I actually started writing my book. I was just trying to research, like, what can I do? How can we go back to what we had? And here's what I have to say after researching, writing a book, starting a blog, is you can't ever go back, but you can create some bridges to get over those middle school years. You don't sit back on your laurels and think, oh, we've done a great job, because even if you have, teenagers are specific and important and special beasts. They are going to start to push back and they are going to want their independence. But if you've bridged that gap, if you've stayed in touch, if you've stayed in communication, you've created some systems to stay connected, it's still going to happen, but you've got this basis for staying sort of in mesh. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Yeah. But I will say the other two boys, when we didn't drop the ball on like having a, sort of a one-on-one meeting once a month or once every 6 weeks when their grades came out, there was less of that snarly 14-year-old attitude. I'm not saying it was perfect, because it's not going to be, but I feel like we didn't assume anything. And I think that's where we get into trouble as parents, is we assume, oh, things are great, or he's a good kid, or we'll never have a fight. So stop.
And then you start to subconsciously assume the resistance or the struggle as a reflection of your parenting.
Correct.
And that's a danger, I think, especially as a mom too. And you made the point, and I want to touch on this. Again, I've not been to this place, but I have eyes, I can observe.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as a mom too, the danger is that you see the independence as a bad thing and like the pulling away, when in reality, that's actually a good thing, because you are preparing them to ultimately be independent once they leave the house. So it's maybe also flipping the narrative in our minds that we actually don't want our teenager on our hip. Like, we no longer want them to actually have that kind of connection. And I think if they are on our hip, then perhaps we have not done something well, because we're not actually preparing them to have independent thought and to think critically, and not just be like, well, I was raised to think this. Well,
yeah, there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it. It's something like, you're supposed to raise our kids to move away, to move on, to move forward. And so if you've done your job well, those are the sort of behaviors that you're going to want to start seeing. Now, there are obviously nicer ways for them to handle in us. I mean, it is 100, not even 50-50. It is, if your kid is snarly and in a bad mood, like my instant reaction, and I have gotten so much better over the years. I mean, I've had a teenager for many, many years, is you can't knee jerk. You just have to take a deep breath. You have to count to 100 if you need to. You maybe even ask for your own timeout to just reframe your thoughts, realize that, well, their brains aren't developed. I mean, I mentioned that earlier. There's so much research, but in the time, and especially with your first, you do react, because I think if you come from a place of you've been, a supportive parent and you have done your job, a lot of times you're used to just responding. But I have a tone problem. I'm constantly reminding myself, okay, take a step back. And because of that, I have gotten a lot better about asking for forgiveness, giving myself a timeout, and then just trying to stay in conversation during these times. I can tell, and my boys know, you know what you've just said is not what I maybe necessarily wanted to hear or was hoping for, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. And I think that's where we can't assume that what they want or what they're thinking is going to be in line with what we're thinking.
Sure. Yeah. You mentioned tone, and I think tone is an important thing to hone in on for a second. This is something that my husband and I had to learn as well. So I worked in emergency medicine for 10 years, and one of the things that you learn really, really quickly is that your tone very much can lead a conversation as an emergency medicine provider. So you learn to kind of level out a little bit, even if inside you're actually thinking oh my gosh, this person's going to crash on me. This person is going to code right here. But on the outside, you're calm, you're collected. You are not in any way conveying on the outside what your internal alarm is doing on the inside. In addition to that, if you have a really aggressive patient, you learn to then hypercompensate on the other side to actually use your tone to help bring down their level of all these nonverbal ways to sort of deactivate a situation. So I came into parenting, I think in some ways, pooling some of those experiences and techniques. Into parenting. But it was something that it was interesting for my husband and I to have these conversations and recognizing how our tone and how we're responding to our child can very much either inflame the situation or it can de-escalate the situation. And so what advice would you give to somebody? Because I think it is so true that a lot of parents actually have no idea how they sound. Meaning, I think there are people who actually sound a lot angrier than they even realize.
Right.
Or they might sound more critical and nagging than they realize. How do we take a step back and actually hear ourselves? How do we even know how somebody might be hearing us?
That's a great question. I think just shy of recording yourself might be to, frame that as a question to your kids. When mommy talked, and you could even start this when your kids are 5, it could just be a little simple conversation out of a moment of heat and just say, how did you feel when we talked about you taking the dog out or whatever? I mean, a 5-year-old's not going to be doing that, but some kind of a little maybe that you were, or maybe you have a feeling. And I think if we stop and do some self-analysis, a lot of times maybe we don't think we sound as bad as we do, but based on the way our children react to us, I think that should be a clue. And that is one thing. When we started to try to reconnect with our, at the time, 14-year-old, we started a little notebook. And I mean, it literally was like a spiral notebook. And things that he was thinking or had questions about or was worried about. And there were times in it when, as I would receive the notebook or my husband would receive the notebook from him, sometimes it said, I felt like you were really mad at me. And it was maybe a conversation we weren't mad at all. So that's when I sort of realized that I already knew that my tone could be kind of sharp. I mean, I was a teacher, so I had to be pretty, and I was a pretty firm teacher. And I thought, you know what? I don't want him to ever, I want him to know when I'm mad. And so if he's thinking I'm mad now, I need to tone that way down. And so that would be a way, especially if they're older, that you could do some communicating, is have them write their thoughts down. I'm a firm believer in not just family meetings, but one-on-ones. And we did them all through elementary with our kids. Every 6 weeks, they would get what's called an IPR, which is interim progress report, I think, is a IPR. Anyway, it was a good opportunity. It was a good excuse to speak with each one individually. And they would come to Kent and I, and we would talk about grades, good or bad, and what were their goals for the next 6 weeks. And we would take that time to talk about like what sport were they in or what was coming up. And it was just kind of a good time to check in with them. And that's what we had kind of dropped with my oldest when he got to middle school. We're like, oh, he's got it. We're good. So not so much. Don't stop. And if you haven't started those conversations, the thing about, this isn't my notebook for the boys, but at the back, I would have a list of I would make a list of things that I wanted to make sure that we talked about, that maybe you have to eventually talk about driving or sex or those kinds of things, but think about the little things too. What happens if someone asks to take you somewhere? This is like when they're teens and they just have gotten their license. Like, how are you going to feel as a parent? So what is your answer going to be? Because that is going to happen all of a sudden. And there are so many things, like as you're talking to your friends and they have teens ahead of you, write down things that you're like, oh, we need to talk about that. Because you're never going to get it all covered, but at least you've got a guideline for yourself. Because the big stuff you're going to cover, that you're not going to forget. Mm-hmm. But it's some of the little stuff. What is going to be a consequence if they get a low grade? And what is a low grade in your opinion? Like in our house, we ask for A's and B's. A C if you're really working hard and you're struggling. All three of my boys have some sort of ADD of some sort. None of them are severe, but math and science were really hard, oddly, for them. Mm-hmm. So as long as they were trying, had to be okay. Anything below a 70, we needed to talk about and make a plan.
Yeah. But and grades are such a fickle thing, because the fact is you could have an incredibly intelligent child who gets A's no problem and has learned no life skills because they don't know work ethic. And then you could have the kid who is just struggling intellectually and gets all C's, but he's learned life skills because he's worked his butt off to get those C's.
Yes.
So it's interesting. I feel like grades have kind of shifted. My husband's a teacher as well, and we talk about this a lot. Like, education needs to change a little bit because it's such a life skills versus like numbers. What good is an A if they've learned no skills? It's right. Like trying to reframe the idea that it's about work ethic and setting a goal and meeting that goal, as opposed to sort of like this quote unquote standard of success.
Right. And there's there's a quotient system. There's like IQ, there's EQ, which we're starting to hear more about, emotional quotient. Mm-hmm. There's also now adversity quotient. And so if you do have a child, and this is as a teacher and a mom, if you have a child that's breezing through school, you need to find something that does challenge them. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be school related, but that is going to show them what it is like to get frustrated and to have to stick with something, maybe a club or a project, or it could be anything, but because that is what is really lacking in a lot of these kids that are getting out into the real world, and then they can't do anything. They give up.
Yeah. They can't handle criticism. They can't handle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's a point for those of you listening and watching, is also pulling in that concept of making sure that there's also not just like a sheltering from struggle, or, okay, your kid's getting all A's, so you're good. Well, maybe.
Maybe.
And getting an A in calculus is not actually going to create a successful.
No. And, honestly, as someone who's been on the back end, as you're putting together that resume when they're in high school for either college or military or even a gap year, they're going to need a resume for a job, whatever it is. They need to be able to put something on there besides school. And so maybe the job they get needs to be a little challenging, and have things bulleted under that job experience where I was able to create a project on my own, or I struggled with this, but this is what I learned, and that kind of thing. Because a well-rounded resume out of high school is key to a lot of opening whatever door they're headed into next.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well-rounded being the key there for sure. We're going to take a quick break, but we come back. Stay tuned for a speed round of This or That with Mel, and we're going to hear more of her expert advice on connecting with teens right when we come back.
You have tried it all. Worried you will never lose the extra weight or reclaim the energy you once enjoyed? Want to achieve fat loss without spending hours in a gym or eliminating entire food groups from your diet? Well, now you can. In the virtual Faster Way to Fat Loss with Ahna, my 6-week fitness and nutrition program, you will learn how to pair effective 30-minute workouts with all-natural, evidence-based nutritional strategies to leverage what you eat and when you eat to reset your metabolism and burn fat fast, even that stubborn belly fat. I am a dual certified nurse practitioner passionate about teaching sustainable strategies to promote fat loss and prevent disease. I have cheered on thousands of clients who have done just that with the Faster Way program. In my 6-week program, the average client currently sheds 7 inches of body fat. 93% report more energy and 89% state that their mental health has improved. 100% of clients report they feel this program is sustainable. Curious to try the program but not sure if the strategies will work for you? Try the Faster Way strategies for free. Head to www.hammersandhugs.com and sign up for my free 7-day fat loss accelerator course today and start your own transformation story.
We are back here with Mel. Okay, Mel, we're going to play a round of This or That. No stress, just one or the other. Would you rather teach math or English?
English.
Truth. Okay, so then going with English, would you rather teach British literature or American literature?
Oh, gosh. Honestly, that would be a toss-up. I love both. My oldest son took Brit Lit in high school and he loved it. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of American authors that our kids are completely unaware of. So I guess I probably stick with that.
The American literature. I'm a Brit Lit nerd. I love British literature. Candy or baked goods?
Oh, probably baked goods, brownies.
Yeah, just straight. Do you have any like special, I love brownies with this in it, or just give me the chocolate?
Give me the chocolate.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's a really controversial question. Boxed brownies or homemade brownies?
You know, I'm going to have to go with boxed because who doesn't have an egg and foil in their
right, and they're so good.
They're so good.
Yeah,
and I underbake them so they're a little chewy.
Yes. Yeah, I knew I liked you. Yeah. Don't overbake my baked goods. Who wants dry baked goods? All right.
Not me.
No. At a movie, candy or popcorn?
Ooh, I'm going to go with popcorn.
Popcorn. I always love telling people this. I had people get real, like the moviegoers know exactly what they want at their movie. And I had somebody say that they do both. They put their M&Ms in the popcorn.
My mom
I was like, all right,
a little weird like that. She puts her peanuts and I want to say her Pepsi or something. I do like my Junior Mints and my popcorn together, but not mixed. Like I like sweet.
Yeah, the sweet and salty peanuts in her soda.
Yes, that's like
I don't even know how that works.
50s thing that like a lot of her friends do it. Yeah, then that's on you.
You drink it with I'm real distracted.
I guess
you drink it with a straw.
Bottom. I don't know.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, no, was soggy peanuts.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no,
nobody ever that they want.
Yeah, I like my Junior Mints, a couple of those.
Yeah.
Full of popcorn.
That would be a good combination. I can get behind that. Wow, peanuts and soda. I don't like either of them separate, so together sounds really challenging.
Really gross.
You mentioned like multiple different things sort of as we were sort of entering into this expertise on connecting with teens, parenting teens. You've used the word connect multiple times. And I do think if you could boil it down to one word, what is the one word success story for raising teens? And it seems like connection is the key there. But I love you have something that you called the 7 C's of parenting teens. And I like, there's a graphic here that's really nice. In fact, we can probably include this in the show notes. It has your little copy right there at the bottom. But it talked to me about these 7 C's. I'm looking at them right now, and I just think it's such a great, she's like, I got to get it up.
I know I've got to put it up.
No, go for it. Go for it. But I encourage you, those of you who are parents, to even print this off and keep it somewhere and even write little notes on it where you want to, because I think this is a very concise way of reminding yourself how to connect with your teen, because it's easy to feel burnt out. And then I think the danger is you check out as a parent, and it's easier to just throw up your hands and be like, whatever, they'll get over it at some point. And you could be losing some really incredible opportunities. Or maybe you work with teens and you don't have teens in your house.
These are all common sense, but honestly, if you're like me and you like to see something written in front of you, this is what you're for. So control what you can, connect with a friend. Now, this is not necessarily, this could be for you or your teen, because like they need to connect with their friends if they're having a rough day. But like if you're having a rough day with your teen, you need to connect with your friend.
Yeah. I think that's a really important piece to plug in there that I would also encourage those of you listening, no matter how old your children are, you have to find people that are in the same boat. Like that is so crucial. I mean, the girls that my girlfriends, we have to have kids that are the same age in order to truly connect. So if you don't have any, like try to find some, even if you're not best friends. I do think it's crucial. Like, Correct. Is my kid normal? It's like, then you realize, oh, okay.
Yeah. This
like,
is
this
a normal
behavior. Yeah.
This is another great time to look for a mentor mom. A mentor mom, someone that's just a step or two ahead of you that maybe has a kid a year or two ahead. That's a good thing too, is just to reach out to them and say, when Tommy was 5, did they, whatever, Okay, so chart your progress. So use a checklist to see your accomplishments. That's more for your teens. Like you don't necessarily need to chart your progress on how it's going with your kid, although you may want to just keep a journal.
What are you having them, when you say a checklist for your accomplishments, like what are you having a teen think through in those terms?
So especially in middle school, it's a great time to try new things. So you might make a list of things they might want to try, like a foreign language, an instrument, a sport, join a club. That's a great time to kind of make a list. And then when they get to high school, maybe they expand that list, get a job, take
or maybe they pare down the list. Do you also is there a place then to give them the understanding now's the time to try things, with the idea that once you get to high school, maybe now you have a better sense of, oh, this is something I'd really like to spend more time doing.
100%.
It's like okay.
Right. You may decide in middle school that you hated tuba. Maybe you wanted to try percussion, or maybe music isn't the thing for you. Maybe you're going to just do sports or whatever. Or maybe you decided in middle school that you didn't like football so much, but you're going to try basketball. And on my website, Parenting High Schoolers, I have a lot of middle school specific blog posts for just that kind of thing. I think a lot of times our kids need to see that they have accomplished something. So make some goals at the beginning of each school year, or at the end of the school year. What is something you wish you would have done that you might want to try next year? It's never a bad time to have a conversation with your teenager, ever. It's always a good time. And so then they can see, oh yeah, I did. I tried, I made a list of 6 things and I tried 3. Hey, that's a great accomplishment. Okay. Also for the kids, chip in around the house. Studies show that even helping your parents out around the house will help you feel better. So that is to just encourage that interaction with the family. And again, a little independence is great. And I am all about kids having time on their own in their room. But I will preface that by saying, if they really want to be alone in their room, then the phone doesn't come with them, because that's with someone. That's with social media. That's with friends.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe put an Echo Dot in there if they want some music, and no computer, because they have ways to get connected. It's just maybe 30 minutes to an hour of time to just decompress after school or before they start homework. And in our house, the door could be closed, but at the end of the hour, they had to open the door. They didn't have to come out, but then the door was open after that hour. And so I think that way you've got a balance. They're getting their time alone, but then it ends.
Yeah, my oldest is 10, so we haven't had to cross, but we've already tried to be really intentional just with a lot of technology concepts already.
Yes.
And I mean, I say this to adults to sleep better, but for kids and teenagers, especially from a medical health and wellness standpoint, all of the above, technology should be staying out of the bedrooms. Period. End of story. For so many reasons that I won't elaborate right here, but for the sake of your child's mental, emotional, and social health and your own, let me also reiterate what Mel said. There should be no technology in the bedrooms. Phones should stay out. So anyways, I'm reiterating that.
Right. And, you know, to just go on a little bit about that is no technology in their room at night, period.
Oh,
I mean, that was ours. I mean, my senior just now has his phone in his room at night, but he has all notifications off. Like I'll text him something for the next morning and I can see notifications are off. So he has learned that he doesn't want to hear the buzzing, beeping lights. And that was sort of our compromise, is that he had never had it in his room until this year. But then I thought, you know, he's leaving. Mm-hmm. He is 18. So and
it's hard in college. College is tough because you literally have one room.
Yeah.
So I do understand that. But yeah, even parents, I will throw that out there. Like my husband and I have always said that anything that we demand of our kids, we will exemplify. So like we do not keep our cell phones in our bedroom. Right. And they're not there overnight.
The alarm. So I have to get up and go in there to turn it off, which has helped. Choose happy. And again, that's for you and your teen. Like, don't watch the news. Or if you do, like I watch the first 7 minutes just to kind of get a blip of what's going on. And then I turn it off, or I turn to a program that I enjoy. So yeah, I mean, don't get bogged down. We are our own worst enemies, and teens have a hard time controlling that. So, and that's another way. Limit the social media, maybe 30 minutes on a phone, especially when they're first starting to have it. To put those rules in place from the beginning is much easier than backing off of whatever it is now. Not to say that you shouldn't. It can be done in baby steps. If they've had full access, maybe back it off by an hour a day until it's where you want it to be.
Now, playing the role of the parent who has the teen, because I'm just imagining this question, how practically, that's an overwhelming concept to a parent, I think, especially if you have not been implementing that early on. What are like practical ways that you're implementing that? Are you taking the phone away from the child, from the teen, for they get it for 30 minutes and then you physically confiscate it? Because that is nearly an impossible thing. Yeah, monitor as a parent. Like there has to be some sort of action plan in place to do that.
So in most things, whether I'm adding something or taking it away, it's baby steps. And so if you have a teen that has had full access and there are problems, which I'm going to guess that there probably are.
How do you not? I mean, you could be the best parent in the world, but it's just like you're a teenager.
Right.
How do you mean? Like I got, even without social media, like kids were getting into trouble as teenagers anyway. Add like the unlimited access to the world. You're not necessarily a bad parent. This is real life. This is going to happen. So,
and the pushback's going to be, there's a million things they'll say to you, and they're probably all true. All my friends do this and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So you're going to have to decide what is your stance. And I would say it's going to be most beneficial if you're on the same page with your spouse or significant other. And then that's one of those conversations that needs to happen. You know, maybe keep a chart, or have your teen keep a chart. Like how much of their day are they on it? And you observe as well. And then what exactly are they needing to get done? Because if your child is doing well in school or needing to do well in school, maybe have a job, maybe you're in a sport, like there's going to be less time for that kind of thing. And that's where their priorities need to be anyway. So if you have a child that is struggling in school, the first thing I would look at is their phone. That is something they can earn back too. Like I'm not saying go cold turkey. And it doesn't matter how you decide to reduce the time, it's going to be difficult. But if you already have your stance and you have the support of the other adult in your house, or maybe it's just you, then you've got to stick by it. I mean, the teens are looking for consistency and boundaries anyway. They want to push back. They're going to push back. But if they see that you're standing firm, they're going to quit pushing back. It's going to take a while. And they, even if they quit pushing back, they might push back in another month just to make sure you're still where you.
Well, and then the hard thing is you have to be the example. This is the challenge as a parent, is if you are going to set these expectations for your kids, the reality is most adults are not doing this well or managing their own mental health when it comes to technology and social media. Yeah. So yeah, it's something that you engage in, I think, as a family culture. I will throw this out there. There are apps to help you limit the time on social media. So that's the other thing. If you're listening and you're thinking, I mean, I would love to do this for myself, let alone my kids. There are apps that you can actually download that will lock you out of certain social media that you can set. There's also an app called Lock My Phone, Zen Study Mode. I use this every morning for my morning routine where my phone's totally locked out. So I can't even open it, and you can set it for recurring hours. So that's another option if you truly just want to turn it off.
Or if you truly can't do it on your own. You say you're gonna and you just can't.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That happens.
Which is normal. That's human. It's human. Yeah.
That's
I just totally lock it out.
Like I've got it right here, but one of our rules is it can't be at the table.
Yeah.
The only time we have ever, not followed that rule was like if someone was waiting to hear from a coach or a teacher, or if there's something, but I mean, it's very rare. Maybe once a month there's an exception.
But even then you can put it in a different room.
Exactly. You can have your notifications on really loud.
Keep it off your person. Yeah.
Yes. That's the other thing is you can go into notifications. Like I just realized, so our oldest son is in Spain. And I remember one day I had turned the notifications off of WhatsApp. I can't remember. Maybe I was on a podcast or something. I was like, oh, I can't have it buzzing. Normally those are on 24/7 because if he is trying to get a hold of me, the time difference and everything. Well, I realized I hadn't turned it back on. Well, but once they're on, I can hear it from the other room. So that, like I said, those kids that want that hour to themselves in their room or whatever, if they've been allowed to have that time, just say, well, that wasn't alone. And that's where you can start the conversation. Just everything can be maybe not solved through conversation, but you can make steps in the right direction, whether it's pulling it away or adding it in. And the best way to prevent a lot of this is just, like you said, set the parameters when they're young. Don't let it get out of control. But for a lot of us, backtracking is, look at what happened when we had our 14-year-old. He didn't necessarily have a phone because at that, he was born in 97. So there were definitely cell phones. I mean, I got my first phone when he was a baby. That sounds crazy. But they weren't as big of a thing as they are now. For my 18-year-old.
Absolutely.
Just that 7-8 year gap, things have changed a ton. And so with him, that wasn't as much of our problem with him, but it became more of a problem with our middle and our youngest son. So in every next step, there's going to be something. So just staying in conversation.
Well, yeah. And to your point, conversation's a bridge. You were talking earlier about creating those bridges. And I mean, this is just a human principle. Having conversation just in general creates those bridges of understanding. Even if you're on two different sides of the bridge, there's at least now something where you can meet in the middle that is going to support you. So having those open conversations are so essential. And then actually, I think that leads beautifully into your number 6 when you talk about the need to stay off of social media and have conversation. So tell us about number 6.
Chat with a live human. So
there you go. What must that be like? There's times that I'm like, oh, do people even know how to have real conversations anymore?
Right. And that can mean a sibling. And again, this is geared towards your teen, but it's all true for us as well.
Right.
And so it says 15 minutes to connect with someone in your house or in the neighborhood. Go outside, ride your bike. Even teenagers can still go out and shoot the basketball, like something, if you go out and shoot your basketball, I bet you anything that the boy that lives 2 doors down is going to come over and start shooting with you. Or, reach out to that mom and say, hey, I just sent Joe outside to shoot baskets. Right. Can Tom come play with them or whatever. Maybe there's an elderly neighbor that they could go check on and just say, hi, I brought your paper to the door. It's just so important. And like I work at home. I work outside of the home 2 days a week and then I'm at home. I need to go take a walk in the afternoon, meet a friend or, talk to a live human being before my family gets home at night. So
Yeah. I think just the concept of getting outside. I mean, I think that's a great thing, even just with that little chat with a live human section on the principle she has, connect with someone in your house or the neighborhood, but you could even put a little star there, because I do think just the concept of being outside, again, coming at it from a health standpoint, there's lots and lots of research to show the benefits of getting outside for your mental health, physical health, the list goes on and on. So maybe put a little asterisk there, get outside. Maybe you need to get outside. Maybe your kid needs to go outside. So I think that's also a great plug-in.
Yeah. And the final one is check in with helpers. And that is true for ourselves too. But again, for your teen, it's important. It's really important that they have another adult in their life that they trust besides us, because they may be able to open up to someone outside. Maybe there's something they just are struggling to tell us. Like our boys, we were really good friends with a younger couple before they had kids. Well, I mean, still are. They have kids now, but all of my boys were really close to the husband. And I could call him and say, hey, this is going on. Could Sam call you or whatever? And I said, I don't want to know what's, unless you feel like I need to know. And so if you can have a trusted outside person, and the list here says teacher, counselor, doctor, but really someone that you trust. It could be the neighbor next door, the mom. Maybe, I know I always loved being the mom, the house that the kids came to. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of things from those kids that maybe they couldn't tell their own parents. Be available. Just be that helper for someone else, for someone else's kid. And we need to check in with our people too. Do you need to go see a counselor? Do you check in with your best friend? How is she doing? And then maybe you need to pour your heart out today.
Yeah, like you have. I mean, I literally just had this conversation at lunch the other day with two girlfriends. One of them struggled very specifically with certain mentalities, etc., that I can't relate to, because maybe to a small degree, but like never to the depth that she did. And I've already had the thought, like, she may be able to connect with one of my girls in a way that I just can't. Like, she may be, because there's an empathy there. Like, my mental, I can speak into it from what I think is true. But if you haven't actually experienced that yourself, there's just only so much that I can speak into in somebody else's life if I have not been there. And I think that's a really valuable thing as you get to know other parents and other just adults in general. If you see somebody who you're like, oh, my daughter kind of struggles with that as well, like, consider how that person could be part of your kid's life, assuming that you trust their insight and you trust the way that they have grown and made their own progress. I think that's such an important one and a really good one to hone in there as well, especially as your kids become older and can have those conversations and sort of have the emotional intelligence to even recognize.
Right. It goes along with that. It takes a village, and it really does. And I love your idea of maybe my daughter's struggling with something that I know my friend did, and that's a good connection. That is wonderful. And, keep those things in mind when our kids start struggling with different things, especially as they get older. It may be something you haven't experienced, and they can tell their, and you just can't relate. So find somebody that can.
When it keeps those doors open, I think the problem as parents is we also sort of get in our own heads that we feel like we're failing because our kid is struggling with something. And so we're not willing to even approach that friend and be like, hey, my kid is struggling with this. Can you speak into their life? Because there's part of us that says, well, I'm failing them as a parent because I should be able to handle that as their parent. So I also want to encourage you, if you're listening and you've had that thought before, I think it's a very understandable human thought, but to really fight that and in fact, embrace the narrative that actually, because I love my kids so much and because I'm such a rock star parent, I'm going to recognize I don't have all the answers and that somebody else might actually better serve my child. So just fight that like negative commentary that, well, I'm failing my kid because I can't parent them through this, when it's in fact the very opposite. You're embracing the imperfect progress and recognizing that it takes.
It does. Community. And don't wait for a crisis. That's the thing. I think a lot of times parents of teens.
Proactive, not reactive parenting.
Yeah, I think a lot of times they wait till they're in the middle of a crisis. And like, I can't help that. I'm not a trained psychologist. But if you're trying to get those systems set up, and that's not to say that a crisis won't occur.
Sure.
But if you set up this scaffolding for a relationship to move forward through their teen years and into their young adult years, and I would tell you, yeah, parenting young adults, you're supposed to be letting go, but a lot of times you're sitting there watching them like, you're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I think it's become a thing. And I think we need to remember, like, if when I was 21, I was completely alone in a city 3 states away doing my own thing. Like, we need to let go. But all that to be said is just, if you've got a system in place, it will help. And then in the back of your mind, have some people in mind, ask ahead.
Support system.
Yeah. If my kid needs help, like, who do I call? Or do you know someone that's good just in case? It's always good to have a just in case person.
And at the very least, print off this little graphic, 7 C's, write down the notes that you remember from this interview. Mel, where can people find you to learn more and hear more about what you do?
Okay, well, starting Friday, I'm actually have a new website called Next Phase Parenting. So that www.nextphaseparenting.
Yes, I'm pretty sure we have that. Let me make.
Yeah, I think I gave you both. So I've been at parenting high schoolers, and it's still
Next Phase
going to be around, but I'm joining forces with a friend that has blogged for empty nesters. And we're kind of joining forces so we can move forward, still doing college and life prep. We'll be on all the socials. But we're also going to be able to speak into parenting young adults and aging parents and that midlife piece that a lot of people are struggling with as their kids leave the nest. Like, what do I do now?
Will all of your resources still be on Next Phase Parenting?
Yes.
Like your middle school resources and all that will still be connected there. They can still find it all. Like, you'll connect it all. Okay.
Yes.
So just go to Next Phase Parenting. Mel Studer, go find her, print off this graphic, check out all these resources. I put a little asterisk here because I'm going to need these resources very shortly, which is terrifying. I might need them now for my youngest. We'll see.
Well, it's yourself. That's a big thing.
Yes, right. It's an honor having you here. I just pray God's richest blessing over your heart, your home, your boys all over the world, and you're blessing so many people with your knowledge and your expertise, because this is teenagers are their own world.
Yes, they are. And they're wonderful. So,
yes,
love them for who they are, they're trying to become, because it's hard. It's hard to grow up. And it was hard enough back when we were doing it and we didn't have social media. So kudos to the kids that are making it through and making it work and making positive changes in our world, because it's not easy. So
yeah, it's hard. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, Ahna here. If you found this video helpful, then you do not want to miss this video right here beside me on the screen. Click on it. I know you're going to enjoy it. You guys, remember, you cannot be redefined, only redeveloped, one imperfect day at a time. Your story matters, and you are loved.